All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Vernita Glenn White. I go by the Brilliant Life Strategist, and I work with high talented, high achieving, high functioning, skilled professionals who are in leadership roles or consider themselves leaders and ones who make decisions. I help them be stronger in those areas while recognizing their brilliance, realigning to their core values, and helping them to rise to the next level that they know they can be in both life and in career. Because sometimes, well, a lot of times, a lot of high functioning individuals focus so much on their professional lives, but not so much on their personal lives. And I believe once you do that for yourself, you can show up more powerful in your professional life and be more empowered. So I do a lot of things. My background is in education, K-12, and in higher ed. The lane that I'm in is mathematics, and then transitioning to understanding all things STEM education and curriculum. But bigger picture in that lane, now I've learned this word, coach salting. Um, I'm really working with leaders and understanding 5 areas of their core content, curriculum, communication, and connection. Core content, curriculum. Yes, communication and connection. Um, so I've been in that lane and then working in the personal growth space, and I've learned a lot. I know a lot about professional development. I know a lot about personal development, and then I'm seeing where the blend needs to happen. So that leads me to this topic of the incident that happened. Well, I saw the film today. It was uploaded on CNN. Looks like 3 days ago, and I put the link to the CNN video in the description box below, and it talks about this New Jersey incident where there were two teens in a mall fighting. And well, it didn't start off that way. You can watch the video, but two teens, a white male and a black male. The white male is a little older, but the black teen, he's of age to be out with his friends. And the black teen jumped in to stand up for a friend that was being bullied. And the white teen didn't like that, put his finger in his face. The black kid pushed his hand off. The white boy shoved him, and then they start tussling in the mall. And you can see, so, kids do what kids do, and not making it any not saying, not excusing the behavior, but hey, that situation, it is what it is. The part that got the city of New Jersey and a lot of people outraged is because what happened when the cops came, and the video clearly shows this. So the kids are tumbling, like they fall on this couch that was in the lounge area of the mall, go to the floor, and by the time the cops come in, the white teen is on top of the black teen. The black teen is on the floor, on the ground. So when the cops rush in, they immediately, I think the white teen kind of stood up. So you'll see the video, but I think he stood up a little bit. But the cops were a white male and a male and a female. They appear to be white cops. So the male cop immediately comes in and tackles the black kid who's already on the ground. He tackles him and he handcuffs him, and he put his body on him to hold him. Then the white kid gets up. The female cop goes to him, sits him down on the couch, no handcuffs, no nothing. And then she gets up. Now the black kid is already on the ground, handcuffs, the officer's on his back. She then places her knee on his back, the black kid. And so it's like, okay. So then with the white teen, he shows, like, I didn't see this at first until they interviewed him, and then I watched it again, but he is telling them to, you can detain me as well, and all of this stuff. And the cop, who looks like she's a white woman, she goes to him and consoles him, like, no, it's okay, you sit here, you were calm. But the black kid was also calm. He wasn't resisting arrest or anything. And you can literally see the female cop, like, rubbing the white teen's shoulder, like, it's okay. There's one incident that was a little like, really, y'all aren't gonna detain him, handcuff him, anything like that. He gets, so while the male cop is on the black teen, and then the female cop comes and put her knee on the black kid, the white kid stands up. So now he's over both of them. And in a situation like that, I'm not going to talk about anything in law enforcement, not my area, but it's like, who knows what that kid had on him, and that situation could have gone really bad. Like, y'all didn't even think to cuff him or anything like that. And so the outrage was there, of course, because it was like, did you really need to use that amount of force? Like, you came in tackling the black kid when the white kid was clearly the aggressor in this video, but when they came in. So I was like, if you take out all of the backstory about, put your hand in my face, push you, all of that, if you only look at the part where the cops came in, the white kid is clearly the aggressor, but you tackled this black kid to the, like, he was already on the ground, but you tackled him on the ground. As well. And so you can see all of that. And the outrage is, you didn't have to use that much force. You didn't have to use any force at all. But even if you did handcuff them, why not handcuff them both? Right? Or their teens, their kids, separate them, tell them they're going to call their parents, but why wasn't there equal treatment? And so it's a lot. You can go watch the video. So my perspective of this, and I've been saying this for a while, probably in my private trainings. I don't think I've done like a lot of things publicly, but I've said we teach, lead, and serve who we are. And I really started thinking about that when that happened with George Floyd and the entire uproar. Now, I've been doing training similar to this prior to that because of my own personal experiences that I had to deal with. Yeah. Especially being a college professor where I was at the time where I was, there were a lot of things I had to deal with racially that I never had to deal with in an academic setting. So I know racism is real, but not like, I didn't feel it in an academic setting, but that's another story. But so I was already doing some work about that. And then when the George Floyd situation happened, a lot of things came out. So I was like, no, we really do teach, lead, and serve who we are. And I added the serve part on there. One part of it was for law enforcement, protect and serve. But as educators, we also teach, lead, and we serve our students. We serve our other colleagues. We serve our community, so forth and so on. And so, the people were talking about law enforcement. There's one attorney who was saying, that, not an attorney, there were two, another incident clip that I saw, there were two law enforcement, one was retired and one was current. They were talking about that this wasn't the right protocol, this wasn't the right training and all of that. And I'm glad they had the two law enforcement people there, because we don't want to say anything that we're bashing the police. So my perspective comes in about the training part. And whatever job you go to, whatever career path you go to, there is a training component. Everyone gets trained in some way. And then you also have like maybe continuing professional development trainings or seminars that you have to go to. A lot of big areas are diversity trainings. And when I researched this, diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings is multi-million-dollar industry by itself, multi-million-dollar lane by itself, and it may have tapped the billion-dollar level by in 2020, around that time when a lot of things were coming out. And this isn't a new topic, so diversity, equity, inclusion, a lot of people don't like to talk about it, because then people automatically go to race, and then people automatically go to black and white. And if you're in the United States, yes, that's what we see, black and white. But in other parts of the world, there are different levels of racism and biases and all of that. So that's one thing. It's like, it's not always just black and white, but in this case, it is black and white. You clearly have an incident where the two officers immediately saw the black kid as the aggressor. Now, they may have gone through all of the training protocol that you do as an officer. I don't know like what they do, but you know, they go through this series of training, and I'm pretty sure they had sensitivity training, and I'm pretty sure they had their diversity training. But through my research and reading books and doing my own trainings, I've learned that there are a lot of um, diversity trainings or sensitivity trainings that are only at the surface level. And I used to be nervous about going into this field. Like, my background is still mathematics, so in STEM education. So my angle for talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and cultural responsiveness is through that lens. But I still had to understand that background and that framework. So, but what I've learned is a lot of people go to those trainings, and I'm only going to talk about Black and white for right now. Well, probably for the most part, because we're talking about Black and white, but you can see this with any other ethnic groups. You can do this with classism and ageism, like gender bias. Like, it's a lot in this diversity, equity, inclusion umbrella. But for this case, there were I remember a lot of people did not like going to diversity trainings because the Black, and sometimes we say Black and brown. So a lot of the Black people would go in like with this chip on their shoulder, like ready to attack. And then a lot of white people will go in had a chip on their shoulder and go in defensive. And then by the time all of the trainings are over, you have some really heated Black people, and then some really upset and some pissed off white people. And I can see both sides. It's like, okay, stop blaming me, or we'll stop acting like this. And it turns into a whole thing and nothing gets resolved. It's just like a checklist, but there's nothing that happens at the core. And I've been to some trainings to where I can see like true transformation and things happening at the core of a person to get down to the root of the problem. And when I started looking at cultural responsiveness and implicit bias and unconscious bias, it really is an individual thing. Yes, there are stereotypes. Yes, we have experiences. Yes, we all have these thoughts about collective groups of people and, whatever the case may be. But what I found is when you start talking to people about their core values, their experiences growing up, any trauma that may have happened, or anything like that, when you start talking from that person and look below the surface, which we only show people 20% of who we are, because the rest of who we are is deep down. So that 80% of the unseen. So we focus on the visible, but it's really that invisible that's a little tricky in there, right? So when you start talking to people and identifying people with the invisible, you realize who you're actually connected to and who you have a lot in common with. And a lot of times it's not the visual, but we don't really, a lot of trainings really don't get that far. And when you do that and you start understanding people's perspective and things that they're dealing with, you start saying, either you're like this because you had these situations, or you're like this because you are, an effed up individual. And sometimes that does happen, but through my training, I realized like everyone doesn't, and it may seem like they do. Some people are consciously biased, like that you're being racist, biased, and all that. But sometimes it's just a trigger, like something happens and you don't realize what's playing in the back of your mind. So I remember when I was doing some work, and I was going through this because I had some issues with some students, some college students at the time, but I was doing some consulting work for this large university and this large school district. And I didn't start off this training as black and white, like you did this and you did that. I went in like, hey, let's get to know each other, and let's get to know you. You need to get to know you a little bit more. And I talked about race and how race actually is a man-made construct, and took them through a whole history. But it's like, hey, we have these classifications now. It is what it is at this point. But it's good to know that, like, really, like some of this, a lot of this is made up, right? And then I remember I had them like get separated by their skin color, just their skin color alone. And there was this Black student in there, she was about to be a teacher, but she was very fair skinned. And when you look at her, she can go like back in the day passing, right? So we were like, okay, so some of these we just can't keep looking at the visible. And I played some clips where people were like, "Oh, I don't like this clip or that or whatever," and I'm like, "Hey, this is all about building awareness." But what I learned because I was very when I first did this training, I was very conscious not to make this. I didn't want the white people feeling bad because they were coming in, and then I didn't want them the white people to think, oh, because she's black, she's gonna take their side, and I didn't want the black people to be like, yeah, get them, kind of thing. So I had to do my own work, and then I realized like some of the biases that I have, and I was like, I think I'm a pretty good person on the inside, but then I do realize like some things you gravitate towards, or some things you may not realize that you do. Simple example, we talked about like if you go to certain parts, or you see a certain type of person, do you lock your door? Do you grab your purse? Do you pull your child closer? And it's not that you actually think that particular person is going to harm you in a way, but sometimes it's a natural reaction based on some things that are happening subconsciously. And so the important thing is to, when you do these trainings, is to talk about making people feel like there's nothing wrong with you if you have these thoughts about someone. I had a participant, she was like, why does she have this thing against people of Asian descent? And it wasn't like she was mean to them, but it was it was like something was off with her and her interactions with them, as someone else pointed out. So when we sat there and uncovered some things, she could remember like I think it was her dad or her granddad or something, talk about the Vietnam War and their experience and all of that. And subconsciously, those stories were sinking into her head as she was growing up. And she's she's white, but she's friendly, open, none of that. But she could tell like things shifted whenever there was a person of who was Asian or Asian descent that came around. And so when she unpacked that as we were going through the process, she was like, oh my gosh. And it didn't make her a bad person. Now she has to be aware of, hey, you got the thing going off in your head, straighten that out when you have this interaction. Now, the bad part is, now, once she became aware of that, and then she still kept treating those individuals differently in a way that was like rude or unwelcoming, then that's when she is no longer a nice person. That's where the problem is. So bringing all that back around to the incident that happened at the New Jersey Mall. Yes, those cops will be reprimanded, or I think fired. I don't know all the details if they're going to be fired or what, but they are going to be reprimanded. And people are like, well, we have to increase the training, or they need to go to sensitivity training and diversity training. And part of that is true, but you need to get at the root cause of what made them immediately think that this kid who was already on the ground, and with the white kid over top of him, clearly the aggressor, what in their brains told them that, oh, black kid, black male, whoop, threat. And that is some inner work that has to happen. That doesn't come out in a seminar. That doesn't come out where the expert is up there saying, these are the strategies and things that you need to take. This is where you bring someone in who's going to get at the root of the problem and have people to look inside and reflect. And I guarantee that even as well, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I can kind of see, like, if you're a cop and if you're watching the news, and depending on where you are, and if the media keeps saying, the black kids are doing this, the black teens are doing that, and the black man is doing this, and this is what you see, or we don't know what your experiences were, you probably got beat up by a black kid, or you were in a neighborhood that happens to be predominantly black, and it just happened to be a lot of violent activity over there, or you may sit and watch movies all day that shows the black man as the aggressor, but you still go around saying that you're a nice person. But all those things are feeding your subconscious brain, and you end up having a bias towards that, and you've internalized that. So whenever you see something happen, that's where your mind goes, and that's where you react. Now put that on top of you having the authority to do that, you don't act with the lens of the cop. You act at the lens of who you are at your core and what's happening. This happens in classrooms with teachers, and this is what started me on this whole journey. This happens with administrators when they make decisions about schools. This happened with, CEOs and people that are just working out in the world. Starbucks just had to shell out a whole bunch of money to send their entire company worldwide to diversity training, right? So when you think about that, it's like, you don't want to say, oh, the cops are bad, or we have bad teachers or things like that. Some people are probably, but I don't think that's like the immediate thing. It's like send in the training, but it's like, who are they are at the core? And at the end of one of those interviews, the retired Black officer or sergeant, he was up there in the rank somewhere, but he was retired. And I want to say, because he's, I'm saying he's Black because that's what I saw him is Black. He finally came around and said, we need to do some sort of evaluations or watch these people. And just because we may meet them, it is okay to turn people away and say, I don't think you're going to make a good cop at this time. And not saying that things, and I said the same thing for people who are going into the education field, and then anybody who's doing any type of training and developing and mentoring other people. There needs to be some sort of like watching of who the person is, and not always on their skill set or their content or their instruction or what they do, but who are they as a person. And not saying you have to be perfect. Everybody's going to make mistakes. People are going to say some things, but there are some things you just don't do or say. There are moments where you catch yourself, and it's all about being intentional. I know I used to just say stuff, right? I used to say stuff and be like, whatever, if it hurts somebody's feelings. But as I matured and gotten older and really started doing this work and realizing, like, are you lashing out because you got some issues? Yeah, chick, probably work on yourself. And then, but then we all have that split moment where we can stop and we can't say a lot. Oh, that was just my natural instinct. A lot of times, just like when those cops rushed in, when they saw what was happening, there was nothing it took nothing for them to step back and actually see. But when it's subconscious, like your lens is so clouded, like that's where you automatically went. Now, when the situation was resolved and everything had calmed down and they were still catering to the white team, then it's like, okay, really? We got something. I mean, we had some things going on when they tackled them, but then it's like, okay, let's say they were in the moment. But when things calm down, it's like, really? You still didn't try to handcuff the white kid, or you're over there rubbing his shoulder like he's on, okay, and then the male cop pretty much slammed the kid in the chair, but the white kid could stand up, sit down, get rubbed on and say, oh, it's okay, you were calm, come on now. That's when we have to look at, why is this? I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, we don't have no excuse now. We can't say we were in the moment, we weren't thinking. So I have some, like, just showing some resources. And again, this is not the only thing. Everything is not always black and white, but in this case, we're talking about a Black teen and a white teen and cops that appear to be white. This is a great book by Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? This is a good book, whether you are faith-based or not. I think Dr. Tony Evans did a great job. Oneness, Embrace, and you can see one race, reconciliation, the kingdom, and how we are stronger together. But he gives a very good, like, kind of a history lesson of race and what happens in the church. But I saw this also as how it influenced society as well. And then another book is Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain by Zaretta Hammond. So I like her work too. Those are just some books that I had in the office and I want to go get them. But the whole thing is, when I put in the description, is that professional development is great, but now I'm seeing more and more that we need to include that personal growth aspect as well. There is no more, I mean, there shouldn't have been anyway, but we know how it is. I mean, I'm not that old, but I still was like, okay, you got your personal life and your professional life. So I can imagine like generations before who are doing that. But now it's like, you know, it's a lot of things happening. We have to show up as our whole selves. So if we're showing up as our whole selves, that means I'm bringing everything I have with me to make these decisions and how I react in my workspace. So yes, I can go to training about how to do the proper I don't know, restraint, or the learning the codes and the law enforcement book. I can go professional development on how to lead a school. I go to professional development on more STEM education or leadership, or I can even go to diversity, equity, inclusion, because that is a content, it's a curriculum. However, the personal side is, who are you at your individual layers, your invisible layers? Who are you at your core? Do you know your core values? Do you know how you make decisions? Do you know your beliefs? Are there any trauma experiences that are triggering you in certain situations? Do you know your what's your I guess I can say like your family stories and your family history, like, you know, when you're sitting around and people, you know, your grandparents and parents are telling the stories, like what are they really saying, and what are you taking away from that? And this can go a lot deeper, but the reason why that's important, because all of that comes with you when you make your decisions to react. And again, I don't want people to think, and this is why, I mean, you know, I'm not bragging, but I feel humbled and honored that when people gave me feedback on my trainings, they were like, she did not make me feel bad as a white person, or I didn't feel like she went too overboard trying to overcompensate or cater, you know, to Black people because she's Black. You know, I wasn't perfect in that training, but they really understood my heart, because I was like, whoa, well, let's not place the blame. And then I still, you know, when the few Black people that were there, they were like, good, thank you for helping others uh, see what we see without being angry. That's why it's so important for anybody who's leading. You have to really keep working on yourself to transform, because you don't realize the weight and the responsibility that you carry. And you don't want to be, you try not to be someone else's trigger, right? But you want to work on yourself, because people are looking at you, people you are leading other people, and you want to make sure that you are making the right decisions and the best decisions as possible. You don't want to keep going off to the excuse of, I didn't know any better, or it was something that just happened, or I wasn't thinking. And you're not going to get it right all the time, but when you do, like, come on, like that situation right there, it shouldn't have happened. There's no, like, really. But then the conversation is, why did it happen? And people are like, this is a lesson learned. I'm like, that's not a lesson learned, because no, isn't there? They're not learning from that, just from that. The learning takes place is if you can get to their heart so they can actually see and change their lens, then that's when the lesson has learned, right? Because once you learn a lesson and once you grow and expand, you don't go back to being the same. You don't go keep making the same mistake over and over. Not saying that you're perfect, but some particular things you just don't do anymore, right? So that's why I like I said, I talk about, we teach, lead, and serve who we are. And when you, I think I got off track, but when you're doing the professional development and then inserting the personal growth, really understanding your core values, looking at your inner layers and all of that, how you make decisions, any trauma, belief. Sometimes you may have to go to therapy. Because I mean, like, I love coaching, I love doing training, giving strategies and all of that. But if it's something deep rooted down inside, then you need to go to a licensed professional. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think, look, everybody can take a trip to the therapist's office, right? But even the therapist, You know, somebody got to be the therapist to the therapist, you know, to make sure that they're clear, right? So yes, we're all humans and I get it. But then it's like there are some things that just, why are they happening? And then the more that we can understand ourselves and why we get triggered or why we're reacting, then that can be it could be a ripple effect, right? Whew. Okay. So I don't know what's going to happen. I know even the, and this is the thing that this young man said, the black team, both of the teams said the black team, you know, he was like, if you can't handle or understand how to do situations or do them fairly, then you don't need to be working in this space. And I totally agree. That's with anything, teaching, leading, protecting, serving, all of that. If you can't figure, you know, like, come on, right? And then even the white team, he was like, I was telling them, like, hey, I don't know why they let me go. And then, you know, sometimes you want to blame like privilege and all of that. Well, that could go one of two ways. Either this the white team can be like, I have this privilege, I get to go do whatever I want to do, or he's gonna start being the advocate. It was like, whoa, wait, this is not how this should go. And I was the one in the wrong, right? But at least he said that. So progress is happening. Like these kids understand more than people give them credit for, right? It's sometimes the adults that be holding on to stuff. And then, you know, we're not thinking about the trauma that can happen to this black kid. Like he's already like, you know, I'm pretty sure his mom or his dad or someone in the family has already given him the talk, right? So now he's going to be scarred and traumatized, and hopefully this doesn't set him on that other path, because things can happen. You don't know, he could be 30 one day and something from that thing, if it doesn't get worked out, can lead him, you know, it can lead him either way, right? So I hope that this all makes sense to you. The bottom line is we need to make sure, I think it would be beneficial and crucial to start incorporating professional growth, personal growth, and personal development inside of our professional development and our training programs, because it's a lot of information. We can learn a lot of skill sets, but none of that matters if we don't show up, or we don't keep our channels clear and keep our lenses clear and bring what's unconscious to consciousness, so we can deal with it and realize that, oh, that's an area of growth for me, or no, I'm just this messed up individual, I need to exit stage left. Right? All right, so I would love to hear from you. You can leave any comments down below. It would be great to hear from you. This is a dialogue, and the dialogue only happens if you can chat back with me. I know we're not doing an actual dialogue. Dialogue takes place down in the chat. So thank you so much. Remember to be well, be empowered, be bold, and be brilliant. Until next time. Bye.